Good afternoon, I hope that you're doing well. Today I'm back to talk about my knitting progress. It's like my 12th trying to film this because everything keeps not working out, so I'm hoping this is the good one. I was also hoping to really film this a couple of weeks ago because I have quite a lot of finished pieces as well as a couple of pieces that are like about to be cast off. So I was hoping that I would actually get to show some of these pieces as more proper works in progress and not like, here is the piece that you've not seen before and it's very nearly done. But alas, it is what it is. The lighting also keeps changing. We're just gonna go with it. I also actually have a couple of acquisitions and I think I'm gonna go through them at the start of the video as opposed to at the end of the video because I bought yarn for 4 different projects, all of which are either currently on my needles or have been on my needles and they've been bound off already. So I think it makes more sense to talk about all of my acquisitions at the start and then you get to see what I actually made with those later. So I went to my local yarn store, I think towards the beginning to middle of April, just before going home for about a week's time. I had about a week off for Easter holidays from uni, and I wanted to get some yarn to start making some summer garments. So I'm really excited to work on camisoles this summer. It's my first like summer as a knitter, and I don't have any summer knitwear. I also don't have any like non-knitwear camisoles really. So it's something that I feel is really missing in my wardrobe and that I think has so many possibilities. I also really like working with small needles, so everything just fits really well. So I went to my local yarn store and I picked up yarn for 2 different projects. Both projects, one is finished and one is about to be finished, so I don't really have much yarn left to actually show you, but I got some black linen DK weight yarn, or well, it's a cotton linen blend I believe, which is the Sesia Bio Lino, and I got that in black. I got 3 balls of that to make like a boat neck, kind of very straight down cami, like top. Just something very easy to kind of start trying out a quick summer project. I ended up self-drafting both of these projects actually. So there's a lot of like nice patterns for kind of bow neck tops. Camisole number 10 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, the Sabai top I think by Susanne Mueller. There's a lot of them out there. I felt like every single one of them had something that I didn't particularly like and that I was going to have to adjust anyways, or I was going to like try to merge all of them together, and so I ended up just figuring out it would probably be easier to self-draft one. And then I bought they got some new yarn in store, which is a cotton merino blend. I've been wanting to try out the Knitting for Olive cotton merino, which I have now, but I saw that they got a cotton merino blend in store at my local yarn shop and I thought I would try it out. It is the Lana Gatto Merinocot. I think it's a 50-50 blend as opposed to the 70% cotton, 30% merino that Knitting for Olive has, and it's also a thicker yarn. I think both this and the cotton linen blend were about 125 meters per 50 grams, whereas the Knitting for Olive is 250 meters per 50 grams. But they got it in this really lovely like rusty red color, and I saw it at knitting night and I realized that they had a new yarn in store, and so then when I went back to get yarn for summer garments, I had to try this. So that's the first 2 acquisitions that I got at my local yarn store. I guess I'm going to show you what I made from them and then I'll talk about the Knitting for Olive yarn order I placed and what I've made or I'm working on from that. So when it comes to the cotton linen blend, as I said, I got 3 balls, so 150 grams in just the black, and I made a nice like boat neck, very simple boat neck top. It is more cropped than I would have liked it to be, but they only have 3 balls left. I would definitely get a 4th, maybe even a 5th if I were to make this again, which I don't think is unlikely. I really quite like the fit of this, to be honest. So I self-drafted the piece, so I guess I will talk a bit about the construction and how I went about it. I tried knitting a couple of gauge swatches for this. I knit the first one on 3.5mm needles. The fabric was a bit denser, but it was also quite stiff, so I didn't like that. And then I knit the second one on 4.5mm needles, and I felt that the fabric had a lot more drape, and you know, the top has quite a bit of drape. I think it's very slightly more see-through, or at least it looked like it before blocking, but I think blocking made the yarn bloom just enough that the fabric isn't actually see-through, and I like the drape of it a lot better. So I knit this on 4.5mm needles. I cast on in the round for the neckline, and then I worked increases while working 8 rounds of ribbing. So I worked 8 rounds of ribbing, and I worked increases along the shoulders. I kind of had like 2 knit stitches on either shoulder that I was working increases either side of. And then after I finished that, I split for front and back, and I just knit straight down for this much. I think it was about 30 or so rows, and then I worked increases to shape the armhole. I did the same thing at the front and the back, with the exception that I worked short rows on the back panel. My biggest concern with this top, and what I found was one thing that I didn't like with many of the patterns that I found, was that they didn't have short rows to raise the back. And I wanted quite a straight across, high up neckline, but I was afraid that without short rows it would be too up in my throat, and especially in the summer heat, probably not the most comfortable to wear. So I worked like 4 or 5 rounds of short rows at the back, just to raise the back by, like, you probably can't tell, you definitely can't tell, but like this is kind of where the front starts. So it's raised by about like 1.5 centimeters or 2 centimeters, which I think gives a really comfortable fit when I wear it. So I don't think it's unlikely that I will make this again. I also really quite like the yarn. They don't have very many colors in stock of this, but they do have like a cream and a nice like caramel type brown that I might consider, and I think I would like to potentially also make another in black, just longer, and maybe a little bit more fitted. I think this will be a really nice like middle of July, really warm weather, or like house top. I think I probably would also like to have a more, I don't know, like fitted more, actually wear to uni type of top, if that makes sense. But I'm really happy because it's like my first fully like self-drafted garment, and it turned out really, really well. And then after the increases, I just joined them around and worked straight for a while, and then I did a little bit of ribbing at the bottom again. And having both ribbing at the bottom and at the neckline, there was no need to really work any like edge, any border or any kind, because the fabric doesn't roll. I find that it sits really nicely. The only thing is, I did Italian bind off for the bottom hem, but I didn't do tubular bind off. So I went straight in with the sewn bind off, and I didn't do the 2 rows of double knitting because I was running out of yarn. And so the bottom edge actually flares out quite a bit. So I've not been back in my local yarn store in a bit, but I think next time I go I'll probably try to pick up some like black elastic thread so I can run some elastic through the bottom just before the hem. Like, I don't know if you can tell, but it flares out quite a bit. So I can just kind of run some elastic maybe through the bottom of the ribbing and then through the top of the ribbing so it cinches in, just kind of to make it look a bit more straight. But overall, really, really happy with it because I don't know, I came up with it during the Easter holidays. I was not necessarily like entirely expecting it to work out, and I think it worked out quite well, besides the fact that it's a bit short. So that's the first piece. And then the other piece, so when I saw this this red, it just made me think of like a fitted ribbed cami. And I was trying to kind of swatch for it, trying to think about what I wanted to do for it. It is also quite a thick yarn, so I was a bit concerned that it might be a bit too warm for the summer. I still am, but I've decided that I'll make something of it anyways. Like, if it's too warm, I'll just wear it under other things in the winter and it'll be fine. But as I was swatching, I started thinking about, like, I wanted a very plain ribbed cami, but I wanted like one element of interest for the piece. and I decided that I wanted to make a little ruffle at the bottom of the piece. I thought that would be really sweet. So I swatched bottom up with a little bit of a ruffle. So I cast on twice as many stitches as I then wanted for my swatch. And then I worked, I think, 8 rounds of stockinette, and then I worked a row where I just did knit 2 togethers all the way across. And then I knit 1 more row. Or well, I'm talking as if I did this in the round. I think I did the knit 2 togethers on the right side, and then I purled 1 more row because I knit the swatch flat. And then I just do 1 by 1 ribbing for the swatch. I actually tried many different types of ribbing. 1 by 1 was the one that looked better. I was actually quite set on doing like an entirely half twisted rib top. I didn't like the way this yarn looked in half twisted rib whatsoever. And it also felt like it had no stretch for some reason, so this is what I ended up settling on. And I knit this on 3mm needles, which again makes for a fairly dense fabric, because the yarn is kind of like a DK weight, really. Maybe yeah, about a DK weight, kind of on the lighter side of a DK / sport weight yarn. So the piece is almost finished. I just need to do the I-cord edge for the neckline and the second armhole, but I've done the first already, and I've knit pretty much the entire cami. So I knit this bottom up. I just wanted to knit it bottom up because I thought it would be easier. I didn't want to have to cast on like 4 different bits and have them on like holder needles or whatever, and then have to join them all together. I also wasn't quite sure about what I wanted to do for the neckline until kind of the last minute, so I thought it made more sense to knit it bottom up, so it left me more time to figure out the neckline. So I cast on so many stitches. I think I cast on like upwards of 400 stitches for the ruffle. Another reason why I wanted to knit it bottom up is because my cast on edge with just a regular long tail cast on looks much neater than my bind off edge, and also I much prefer casting on than I do binding off. So I thought if I have to cast on 400 stitches and have them looking as neat as possible so I don't then have to go back and work I-cord all over it, I would rather actually like cast them on rather than have to bind them off, if that makes any sense. So cast on for the ruffle, knit stockinette for about 8 rounds, did a round of knit 2 togethers, and then I did 1 more knit row, and then I started working 1 by 1 rib all the way up. I did work some waist shaping, which was entirely unnecessary. This top is like far too big for what it actually needs to be. Like, it fits me okay, but it could also fit someone probably like 2 or 3 sizes up from mine. It has a lot of stretch, if that makes any sense. So I definitely could have gotten away with casting on way less stitches. I don't think it's that unlikely that I might do this again. I think a black version of this would be lovely, maybe in a bit of a thinner yarn. But yeah, I started working like increases at the side to do a little bit of waist shaping. I was gonna work them all the way up every like 8th round or so, or 9th round, I can't remember. I ended up doing 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I stopped and I just worked stockinette in those side panels, because I realized that I just did not need that extra room. The top was stretchy enough. It was definitely not, like, it doesn't fit me oddly, like it fits tightly still. It has enough negative ease that it fits okay, but also it could have way more negative ease and still fit perfectly comfortably. The only other thing that I was a bit unsure about was the neckline. I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I thought I would do a boat neckline, but I didn't quite want it as high up as the black top, but I also thought a square neckline would look cute with it. I ended up just doing both and figured I can wear this both ways. This doesn't have any short rows. It's got the same amount of stitches both sides, so I can wear it both ways. Realistically, like actually trying it on after finishing the neckline, and I have blocked this, although I don't block my knits very aggressively. I've just recently, like this week, gotten like blocking pins. I'm planning on working on a couple of lace pieces, which I think are going to need to be blocked properly, but otherwise I just wash my pieces and then lay them out as nicely as I can, but I don't like force them in place or anything. But after doing that, the side with the lower neckline fits perfectly. I'm so happy with it. The side with the higher neckline pulls in a little bit, like this part of fabric in the middle obviously pulls in the straps a little bit more than on the other side where there's no fabric and the straps can just sit very straight up. I don't like it when tops do this kind of thing where they come in. I like a top to go like very straight down. So I think I am probably going to re-block this after I've finished working the I-cord and just try to block it in place a little bit wider, so that hopefully it sits more straight and I like that better. But otherwise I'm really happy with how both of them fit. So what I did was, after working and ribbing up until the armhole, I split for front and back. I bound off the stitches that were stockinette panels for the waist increases either side, and then I worked decreases every other row for the armholes for however much I wanted it to come in. I think I have better notes somewhere, or I can figure it out just by looking. I don't know that I actually wrote it down. I think I just freehanded it, but I'll try to, like, if anyone is interested, I can figure it out from this. But I know I did decreases every other row for the armholes and then every row for the neckline. So once I got the neckline to the point where I wanted the neckline, I bound off the stitches here in the middle, and then I worked decreases every row until the strap was the width that I wanted. And both necklines have the same shape, like they've got the same amount of bound off stitches in the middle and then the same decreases either side, just one is worked before the other basically. And then I joined them with Kitchener stitch at the top. I have worked I-cord around the first armhole. I've yet to do the neckline and the second armhole. I did I-cord with the kind of the method that I found through most videos on YouTube that has you use double pointed needles. I did not enjoy that whatsoever. I didn't like picking up stitches as I was working the I-cord, and I found the DPNs really made my hands hurt. I don't know if it's because they're small. I worked the top again on 3mm needles, but I did the I-cord on 2.5mm needles, so I don't know if it's because of that, but I've never had like small needles make my hands hurt otherwise. I just did not enjoy it. And then for this other top, which I will talk about in a second, I tried a different method for doing I-cord that I liked much better, and so I think I might try to do that for the rest of the top. Hopefully it doesn't look different from this first one that I've done, but I enjoyed that so much better, so I'm gonna do that, and then if it does end up looking different, I'll just rip out the first one and redo it. It's fine. So hopefully this should be a finished object in the next probably not in the next couple of days because I'm not bringing this home with me for the weekend, but you know, in the next like week or so. So then while I was actually home for Easter, I ended up placing a knitting for olive yarn order. I've been wanting to try knitting for olive yarn for a while. I've had a lot of people talk about them. I've had a lot of positive things about their yarn and really not many negatives. However, none of my local yarn stores stock knitting for olive. There are a couple of shops in Milan that have it, but it's not like somewhere I can get to within like a kind of a regular day. I'd have to like organize a trip for it. And also they do have online stores, but they don't have all of the knitting for olive yarns in stock. And I really wanted to try the cotton merino, but I think none of them had the cotton merino in stock. So I ended up buying 2 different camisole quantities. I got 3 balls of each. The cotton merino I got in the color Thundercloud, and the merino I got in the color Licorice. I was planning on making 2 summer camisoles with these. One is the one that I'm currently wearing, which is the mixed rib Cami by Florence Miller, and the other I'm making the Barbroe top by Pernille, Larsen, or you know, Knitting for Olive Patterns, and I cast that on yesterday. So I'm going to talk about what I'm currently wearing first. We're just kind of going a bit back and forth between finished objects and whips today. It is what it is. It just feels a bit more intuitive than like a regular knitting podcast format. So again, Knitting Frolic Cotton Merino, Thundercloud Grey, and this is perfect. What more is there to say? I cast this on not last weekend, the weekend before that, and this took about a week and a half to finish. I had such a good time working both on this pattern and with this yarn. Cannot recommend them enough. So the Cami is a bow neck cami with a mixed rib pattern, so it has some panels of stockinette and some panels of half twisted rib in the middle. I think they just give a really elegant but also like slightly more interesting look than just plain regular ribbing does. It was also a lot of fun to work on. I really like working with small needles, and I don't find half twisted rib to be annoying to knit. Fully twisted rib, I don't know if I would do like a fully twisted rib piece, but half twisted rib I do like, and even for the kind of the top parts where it's not all joined around and you have to work it on the reverse side, so on the wrong side, and so you're twisting your pearls, I found it quite comfortable to do still with this yarn and needle size combination. So I don't know, personally I would cast on another one of these today, and I probably actually will. Well, not today because I don't have any more yarn for it, but I probably actually will make another one of these. So the way that this has worked is it's a top down cami. You cast on at the back, so the back is just knit, the top of the back is just knit as like a rectangle, and then you work increases for the armholes, so you don't have any neckline shaping for the back, you don't have to cast on like different triangles and join them together, it's just like straight across neckline. And then you pick up stitches either side to knit the two halves at the front, cast on stitches to join them together, and then again knit down, work increases for the armholes and join everything in the round. I knit the second smallest size, so I think size B, and I just broke into the third skein of this, so like I pretty much have a full one left. I used two to finish the top, and I bound off, and then I used the third for two of the I-cords, I think. So I have plenty of it left. I definitely could have knit it a bit longer, but it's not cropped really, like to the point where so I wear high-waisted trousers. My like character outfit for the rest of the summer is going to be like high-waisted linen trousers, and either a t-shirt or cami. And so I tried it on when it was sort of at a length that I thought might be okay. And I tried it on and I realized that I like the look of it much better when it's just over the waistband of my trousers rather than tucked inside, which I normally do with t-shirts. And so I knit it a little bit shorter than I would have if I were really to make something that I would want to tuck into my trousers fully. But I kind of like that look. But it's not cropped to the point where like my belly is showing if I'm just kind of sitting normally. So I'm really happy with that. I thought the pattern instructions were clear. The instructions for the I-cord are not, well, like none of the instructions are really like extremely verbose particularly, and I thought the instructions for the I-cord were very minimal, but not to the point where they're not understandable. I reread them twice and, you know, it was fine. The I-cord looks great, and I enjoyed this method for doing the I-cord so much better. Florence has you pick up all of the stitches first and then work the I-cord, similarly to the way that I work a double knitted button band, where I just keep all of the stitches on a long cable, and then I use just that long fixed circular needle to knit the double knitted button band. I don't use DPNs or anything. I don't like DPNs apparently. So like I knew I don't like DPNs for socks, but I also just don't like them in general apparently. So I'm just really, really happy with this cami. I don't feel like I have anything more to say. I'm very likely going to knit another one of these. I'm thinking probably in the cream. I'm also really happy with the yarn. The Knitting Frolic Cotton Merino, as well as the Merino, which I will talk about in a second, are both like a light fingering weight yarn. Again, they're 250 meters per 50 grams. I think with this pattern specifically on 3mm needles, it did work out to be a little bit see-through. Not in the stockinette panels, the stockinette panels are fine. In the twisted rib panels, the kind of the pearl stitches are a little bit see-through. I don't think you can tell. Maybe you can in person, like if you're really looking for it, but it's not something I would really like feel uncomfortable with. Just maybe swatch and see if you like it. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like something that bothers me to the point where I would go down a needle size for it, but I did think I would mention it. Other than that, I had such a good time working on it. It's just, I think it's probably my favorite yarn needle size combination that I've worked with so far. Will definitely purchase again. I do have another finished object to talk about, but I will skip over that for a second to talk about my second project that I'm making with Knitting for Olive yarn. Again, this is the Merino in the colorway Licorice, which is their black. I wish they made more colors in the cotton merino. I also found out that they wanted to discontinue it a couple of years ago, and I'm so glad that he didn't. This is so nice. It's fairly warm today. This feels great. And I'm hoping to be able to wear it like well into the summer. I'm not so sure about the merino. It does get quite warm here in northern Italy during the summer. Mostly we have a very, very humid, hot weather. And so it does get to like 33, 34 degrees most days in the summer, but also it's very humid, so everything is sticky. So I'm not so sure about like how the merino is going to behave in that weather, but I wanted to try it out and kind of see how I felt about it. Again, I wear like camisole, essentially camisoles underneath all of my clothes pretty much from like September to May, so it's not like if I make a merino cami it'll go unworn. So I thought I would try it out, especially because there's a lot of colors that I like in the merino that they don't make in the cotton merino. But just to try it out, went with a safe choice and got the black. And that is a project that is my most recent cast on. I cast this on yesterday afternoon. And that is the Barbroe top by Pernille, Larsen or Knitting for Olive. So I've been thinking about knitting the Barbroe blouse for a while. That is on my make 9 for the year. I think for the size that I would make, I would need 4 balls of this yarn. I only got 3. I didn't really think about it, but also when I then thought about it when the yarn arrived and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with it, I realized that I don't know how much wear I would realistically get from the blouse. I don't know, it feels like the kind of thing that I would look at so many times and just not have the appropriate weather or the appropriate occasion to wear it. And I figured I would knit the top first, and then if I really like it, and if I figure out that maybe, you know, the lace pattern is something that I could wear with the long sleeve, maybe I'll knit that too. So I've cast it on and I've done 3 repeats of the lace pattern. I think I'm meant to do like 14 or so, but I am modifying this pattern a bit. So it's a bottom-up all over lace cami, but the way that it's worked is, so at the beginning you cast on a lot of stitches and then you decrease some of those out to kind of enhance the scalloped edge that the lace pattern naturally forms. And then after that you work from 3 different charts, and the first 2 charts are meant to, from what I've been able to understand, kind of give the bottom of the top a flared look, because you kind of work some increases and some decreases, and I just did not want that. I wanted like a straight down fitted top. I figured the merino in this kind of knit would still give me like a stretchy enough fabric that even if it had to kind of cinch in a bit more at the waist and stretch out a little bit more over the hips, not that it's going to really be that long to properly get to my hips anyways, but I figured it would be stretchy enough to do that without me having to work all of that, because again, like seeing how much I dislike the flared look with this top, I did not want that with this one. So I redid some calculations to figure out how many stitches to cast on, so that I could just start directly working chart C. And I did just a regular long tail cast on, I think. No, I did a German twisted cast on, which is what I normally do for socks, because, so the pattern has you do a regular long tail cast on, which I think makes sense, because if you are gonna have kind of that flat look, you probably don't really need like excess stretch in that bound off edge. But I figured because I wasn't going to do that, I was afraid that a long tail cast on wouldn't give me a stretchy enough edge, and so I did a German twisted cast on instead, which gives you a little bit more stretch. So I don't know what to say. I don't know what more to say about this really. I'm really like 3.5 repeats in. The lace pattern is really lovely. A lot of it is just knit rows. I will say, definitely recommend putting markers to mark your repeats, because you either have to do a lot of counting. I feel like you have to do a lot of counting anyways, but you either have to do a lot of counting and really be focused on it, or you can put markers and be a bit, you know, more chill about knowing where your repeats end and start. So I put markers every other repeat. I don't know if you can tell, I just have like little like gold jump rings for most of them, because I find them easier. I have some of them to make like earrings and stuff, but I found them easier to use as stitch markers than like the big plasticky ones. They're easier to kind of slip over. But I put mine every 2 repeats, just to kind of have a bit of an idea about where I'm at with my stitches. If I make a mistake, it's a lot easier to figure out where the mistake is. And so I would definitely recommend doing that. Otherwise, again, I'm knitting this on 3mm needles. I'm working on this, but I also knit this on 3mm 60cm cable, which I didn't have before. I bought specifically for this because I didn't want to work magic loop, and it's been really enjoyable. So again, having a really good time with this. I'm gonna bring this home for the weekend. Hopefully I can make some good progress with it, but I just feel like it's like my favorite yarn weight knitting needle combination, and I'm having such a good time. Also, I don't think I mentioned, I'm knitting size, I think it's the smallest adult size, but this also has a teen size before that. So, you know, in case that's helpful. But again, it's looking a bit different at the bottom. It's looking probably smaller than it should be, because I'm not doing what the pattern is really telling me to. The lace pattern is charted, by the way, but the pattern has quite extensive written instructions. I've read through some of it, but not all of it. I've heard some people, or like I've read some people writing in their Ravelry notes that when you get to working the neckline, you end up having to break the yarn a lot, because the pattern has you work the I-cord edge together with the straps. And a lot of people have said that the pattern is written in an overly complicated manner because of that. So I think I'm probably just going to work the straps and then the I-cord separately, same as I did with this top, because this was a really good experience. So I'm probably going to do the same for that. Next up, I think I'm going to talk about my other finished object, which I feel like is a bit of I don't know, it's a bit strange to talk about it so late, because I finished this very shortly after the last episode, and I've worn it. When I tell you I've worn it like probably 25 times already since then, it's not, you know, it's an underestimation probably. And this is my Solene cardigan by Moreca Knit. This was a work in progress last time. It was my main whip. I'd cast it on quite recently, like as I was filming that, and I think I had just joined underneath the arms. I ended up finishing this about a week later, I think. I was really prioritizing working on this because I was really hoping that I would still get some cool enough weather to wear it before the summer, and I'm so glad I did. I got like a proper full month wear out of it. I've had it pretty much every day going to uni. I've worn it, like I had it on today. I went to a book fair with a friend, and you know, I didn't want to bring a jacket, but I brought this to go out in the morning, and it was great. I had such a good time knitting this. I'm so happy with the finished object. I cannot speak highly enough of it. So I knit this using the Sesia Origin, which is a 70% wool, 30% alpaca blend. And it's the same yarn that I used to knit my Sporty Knit Scored, which was a finished object in the previous episode. My idea was that I was going to make this as a matching top for that skirt. To be quite honest, that pair altogether is probably my least favorite look with this. I don't think it looks that good with a short skirt. I've tried it with other similar skirts as well. I don't think it looks that good because they're a very similar height, and so my proportions just look very weird. But on top of like long skirts and trousers, it's been perfect. So I have, you know, a bunch of yarn left, but I don't have like a full one left, so you're just gonna have to imagine it. But it's just a really lovely alpaca wool blend, dark grey yarn that I really enjoyed working with for that skirt, and so I thought I would make a matching top with it. This is my first cardigan ever, and I was really excited to work on it because I think it's so pretty with the tie fronts. I know ties and bows have been really popular lately, but it's not a type of pattern that I necessarily really seen much of before. And I thought it would be cute to wear over t-shirts and over camisoles and be something a little bit different. Like, because I don't own cardigans, I don't know what kind of cardigans I would really actually wear. And so I thought, you know, I felt really drawn to this and I thought I would try and knit it. And it's a top-down construction. I wouldn't really know how to describe it because it's not necessarily a drop shoulder construction, because you don't cast on at the back of the neck and then work increases or short rows to kind of make a trapezoid for the top of the back. Instead, you cast on separately for like the two shoulder backs, and you work short rows to make essentially two triangles that you then join together. So the pattern, the pattern for the back doesn't go like this, but it goes kind of like this. And I was a bit confused when it came to joining them together, that I was actually kind of maybe joining them the wrong way around, but no. It is kind of meant to have that dip at the back of your neck, which you then obviously kind of will fill in with the double knit button band, which doesn't have button, like just the double knit front edge, but it has a really nice fit and it kind of dips down just a little bit at the back. And then from there you just work the back like normal, work increases for the armholes, pick up at the front, and then again you work short rows to shape kind of similar triangles for the fronts, and then from there you just keep working increases for the v-neck and then for the armholes, and then you just join everything together. Obviously not in the round, it's a cardigan, but you then work stockinette all the way down. I did knit mine, well, I didn't actually measure compared to like what the pattern recommended, but I think I knit mine a bit cropped. I wanted it to sit kind of at my hip bone, basically. I didn't want it to be longer or shorter, I just wanted it to really like hit me at my hip bone, and I think it does, and it's perfect. And then you work like a short bit of ribbing at the bottom, and then I did a tie and bind off for that. Same thing for the arms. I did change the rate of decreases for the arms a little bit because I felt that the way the pattern was written, the armholes were, or not the armholes, but the sleeve size at the wrist was a little bit too big, and I didn't want to have that be too loose. I felt that it would be like a bit impractical. Like, I love the look of a bell sleeve or like just a straight down no decreases sleeve, but I feel like for daily wear it's a bit impractical. So I ended up doing decreases every 8th row. I'm not gonna say instead of what, but you know, for my size it was more than 8 rows, and I did decreases every 8th row. And I knit size 1, so the smaller size. I do think my gauge was like the tiniest bit off. I think I was 1 stitch off, so my gauge was 20 stitches in 10 centimeters, whereas the pattern recommends 19. But it's meant to be quite an oversized cardigan anyways, and even the smaller size still has quite a lot of positive ease. And I did my calculations and figured out that even if I, you know, kept my gauge as it was on 4.5mm needles, I was still going to get a cardigan that would fit me. And I really like the fit of this. I don't I'm not the biggest fan of like really oversized garments. I think this is not a tightly fitting, but like it's a well-fitting garment for, you know, for what I wanted. So I'm really, really happy with it. It was also my first time knitting a double knitted band. I had a good time with it. I had an unexpected day off from uni and I knit the whole front edge double knitted band in a day. It's pretty much all I did, but I did it all in a day. I think the pattern actually has you do the double knit band before you do the sleeves, but I was going to bring this with me on like a 4-hour train journey. And so I wanted something that would just be very easy to bring on the go with me. You know, the sleeves, you need to pick up stitches, you work short rows for the top of the sleeves, and then you just work stockinette and decreases, and that's something that I can easily do on the go, especially on the train where I have a bit more space than I do normally on like public transport. And so I wouldn't bring this to knit on public transport, but I bring like a sock or like this cami to knit on public transport. But because I'd never done a double knitted band before, I wanted to be able to like sit down on my desk with a video and like really, you know, focus on it and make sure that I was doing it right. I had a really good time working on this. I think the double knitted band is knit on 3.5mm needles. So it's a little bit smaller, but it's not like so small that it felt like it really took forever. And I also didn't find it like particularly taxing on my hands, which I was a bit concerned about. The only thing is, I will put a close-up of it. I didn't pick up stitches like far down enough for the button band, and so I should have picked up like an extra stitch like basically underneath the ribbing as opposed to like on the side of the ribbing, because my double knit band is sitting a little bit higher up than the bottom of the ribbing, and it pulls it up a little bit. Again, I blocked this quite loosely. I didn't have blocking pins when I knit this, so next time I wash this I will block it so it's a bit more square, and hopefully that helps kind of stretch it out a bit. But you know, it's fine. I just kind of pull it forward a little bit so it doesn't ride up too much. But you know, if it's fine. The ties are just I-cord. These were like really quick to knit as well. I did do both ties. I think the look with one only, which I've seen some people do, is really cute. My grandma was also suggesting adding a third because it kind of the bottom of it is like open, but I think two is really like the perfect look. Okay, sorry about that, camera battery ran out. Hopefully I can finish this before it does that again. But that's really it about this cardigan. I'm so happy with it. I think it just looks so cute with everything, with t-shirts, with camis. I've not worn it with like a collared shirt yet, but I think it would be a really pretty pairing. And unexpectedly, oh well, like it was not planned really, but not necessarily so unexpectedly, I do have a colour palette that I think is quite clear, but it's basically the same colour as the mixed rope cami that I made, and I think they look really good together as well, so I'm gonna keep this on. Next up, I have two more things to talk about, both of which are pairs of socks, and both of which you have seen before, so this is going to be quite a brief, you know, ending, I suppose. But I think last time I'd finished the first sock for both of them. This first pair is the Quilty Cabin socks by Horse Feather Fibre Arts, and I've now finished them. I've got two. I'm so happy with these. I knit these as part of a knit along that a bunch of different people organised. So Marley knits, Julia, her friend Julia, and then Liz and Paige. They also now have a YouTube channel, so I will link all of their accounts below. But they organised a knit along for these socks, and it was my first knit along. I had a really good time with it, and I had a really good time knitting these socks. So these are top down colourwork cuff socks. I did a little bit of a weird thing that I talked about last time, so I'm not gonna, you know, go too in depth about it again, but to make my colourwork socks fit, what I did was I cast on I think 64 stitches on 2.25mm needles, worked the cuff, increased to 78 stitches, which I think, I don't know if it's a size up or 2 sizes up, and I also switched to 2.5mm needles to knit just a colourwork chart. and then I decrease back down to 64 stitches and 2.25mm needles, and I knit the rest of the sock, and that works perfectly. These fit really, really well. They get over my heel really comfortably, they don't fall down, they're not too tight, the colour work doesn't stretch out too much when it's on my foot, and I think they are so cute with like low-rise Doc Martens, which was my vision. So happy with these. I don't think it's unlikely that I will knit another pair with 2 repeats of the colourwork star motif to make a taller sock to wear with boots for the winter. I think that would be really nice, but for these I just wanted like a shorty pair of socks. And I used Drops Fable for both of these colours. I used colour 400 black and colour, I can't remember the number, but the name is Wheat, which is like a really light beige or like a very off-white for the stars, and I think it looks so good. And I use less than 50 grams of the black to make these. I can get a pair of shorties out for, you know, less than a ball of yarn, so that's really nice. So that's the first finished pair of socks, and then the other socks that I'm working on are my like half twisted rib self-drafted socks that I started last time. This is also Drops Fable in the colorway Wheat, and then I'm using Woolen Twine Fiber Studio Ovis sock in the colorway Maroon from her January drop for a contrast toe and cuff. And it's just 66 stitches on 2.25mm needles, half twisted rib, heel flap and gusset. I lined up the gusset so that the slip stitches line up with the twisted rib stitches, or the twisted knit stitches, and the knit stitches line up with the pearls on the mixed rib side, so that it kind of continues very seamlessly. And then I just did stockinette for the bottom of the foot and twisted rib for the top, and I kept the twisted rib going for the toe as well. I didn't do stockinette. So I picked this back up after finishing the second sock for these. I finished this on the way to the Luminous concert in the car, and then I had more time, and so I started working on the second one of these. And I haven't picked this up in about a week's time, but you know, I really do want to finish these. I think it'll be another like nice shorty pair of socks. So I've done the cuff and the leg, I've done the heel flap and the heel turn, and I need to pick up stitches for the gusset. The thing is, and the reason why I haven't kept working on these, is that I like picking up stitches for the gusset with a 3.5mm crochet hook, and I've lost mine. I think I lost it somewhere in my sofa back home, but I've not been back to actually be able to find it, and I've not been back to my local yarn store either to buy another one. So I'm probably just gonna either find it or buy another one, or you know, give up and pick up stitches normally, which I have done for all of the I-cord that I've done for all of these camis anyways. It's not been the end of the world, but you know, probably gonna finish these next week as well. I have a couple of projects that are so close to being finished that I just want to get off my needles, and you know, just keep a couple that I'll work on more steadily. I've not made any progress on my Campanula tee, which I started last time. I think once I finish the Barbroe top, the Campanula tee is probably going to be my main priority, and then in the meantime I'll see how I feel about the Merino, and probably place another Knitting for Olive yarn order with, you know, some different colours of the cotton merino and the merino. I might also try the pure silk. If you've tried the pure silk, let me know how you find it for camisoles, because I've heard a lot of people say that it stretches and it's not very suited for like tightly fitted camisoles, because silk has just naturally more drape and it doesn't retain its shape as much as wool does. So if you've worked with it, let me know how you find it and what types of camisoles you feel like it might be more suited to. I think it would look really nice for t-shirts, but I don't really need knit t-shirts. So I don't know, maybe if I end up making like a couple of more flowy camis, that might work out well. Let me know if you have any suggestions, but with that, I think I've rambled on for long enough, and I've also finished my tea, so I might go make another before I have dinner, and I will catch back up with you hopefully a bit sooner. Let me know what you've been working on during this past month, if you have any finished objects, any projects that you're excited to share, and I hope you have a really lovely rest of your day. Bye!